Welcome to ReadTech Insights. This portion of our video series on EU legacy devices discusses the criteria and the 6 modules of EUDAMED.
So it does behoove us to dive into those articles and find out what the criteria is to make sure that if you consider having your product comply with this and enjoy the extra timeline for the transition, what is any and all of the criteria that you need to comply with. So if you go into those 2 articles, start to flesh them out. We've already confirmed the fact that they need a valid certificate. So these are the class 3s, 2A and Bs, and the 1 sterile and the 1 M for the measuring. They do have directive certificates, so they are in scope. The other item that needs to be complied with is that these particular devices need to follow the directive requirements and be monitored by a notified body that originally certified that device. That's nothing new. You've probably been following that particular practice for years. But there's one little wrinkle there. With the advent of MDR, there's a number of notified bodies that have elected not to continue to go forward and step out of the business. So I think if we look at the ones that are actually approved by CE, the count went from like 60 down to about 20 or so now of the notified bodies that would be available to perform the MDR. So if your notified body does go out of business, that puts a little wrinkle in it. I don't know exactly sure if you're able to work that out with the European Commission or not, but that is something for you to deal with. Then the other criteria that we haven't seen up to this point is mentioned in these articles, that the device has to have no significant changes that would affect the design, safety, or effectiveness. And normally these particular significant changes would need a revised certificate. So if the MDR was not in the background here, you'd apply those changes, you'd get a revised certificate and keep on going down the pathway marketing those products. But if there is a significant change, now this particular device no longer qualifies to be in the legacy program, and it would then need to comply with the MDR requirements, much more stringent and time consuming. So be aware of that. So this significant change. Now, industry had a lot of questions about what do you really mean by a significant change? So the European Commission rolled out this, actually it came out of the Medical Device Coordination Group. There's a link down there at the bottom of the page, MDCG 2020-3. There's about 14 pages of information there about this, describing what a significant change is. So it has some nice flow charts. So follow that link if you have questions about a significant change. The last and 4th criteria is that these devices that qualify for being a legacy need to comply with the MDR or the IVDR for a number of areas. So mentioned specifically would be the post-market surveillance, market surveillance, vigilance, registration of economic operators and devices in place of the directive requirements. So that's interesting. This is a device that's been certified under a directive, and yet for these particular activities, they have to comply with the MDR. So it's a little bit of a hybrid activity going on here. In the background, we'll get into the details here, but to register your economic operator and your device and report your serious incidents into the vigilant module, EUDAMED has to be up and running, and that's not the case as of yet. So those particular items in this last criteria are actually suspended, and the directive mode of operation is still in play until EUDAMED becomes up and running and fully functional. Now, there's 2 other points here before we leave this page that we need to talk about. The first one is that if you do not qualify for these 4, or if during the course of that 3-year transition, one of these is no longer able to be met, then you don't qualify. You cannot continue to place that legacy product on the market. So you're only pathway there would be to have that product or equivalent product certified under the MDR or the IVDR. So what could change? Well, your certificate might change. You might have an expiration like 6 months, year, 9 months into that 3-year period, and therefore you would no longer qualify. Or you might have a significant design change, and you, for whatever reason, for safety or whatever, you felt like you had to roll it out. So you did so, and now it's significantly different, and it no longer allows you to be in this legacy bucket. So you then need to follow the MDR. Now, the other point was that related to the class 1s, and I think I alluded to this earlier, where legacy devices do not include self-certified class 1 devices because by definition, they don't have a certificate, a directive certificate. So from the date of application, they must be MDR compliant. So that is another little wrinkle. It's interesting that the least risky devices, class 1s, actually have to comply first, but that's the way it was written, and that's what the rules of the road are. The criteria that we saw there had some references to doing some things according to the MDR, and by implication, we need to understand a little bit about EUDAMED. So very quickly, there's 6 modules inside the EUDAMED database, this European new platform for storing all the regulatory information on medical devices. The first module is up and running, the economic operators for actors to register themselves, and they're actually able to get a single registration number, an SRN, that's assigned to their company. And that started for voluntary submissions as of December in 2020. The next 2 modules are expected to open for voluntary registration and submission in September of 2021. So those 2 modules are UDI and device registration module and the certificates and notified bodies modules. So there was mention, if you remember, that a legacy company had to register their organization. So that would be the first module, and also register their medical devices. That would be into this UDI and device module. So we have the 3 with a schedule of September of this year, the second and third being available. And then the last 3, they're still in progress. So there's a lot of work going on those 3 particular modules: clinical investigations, the vigilance, and the market surveillance module. It appears as though they will be finished and fully functional by May 2022. And that's when a notice is expected from your commission saying that the audit has been completed, they're now fully functional. So there's some issues there about whether or not they'll make that date, but that's what the official date is. So that's what we'll work on. Now, the vigilant module is noteworthy because that is where those serious incidents are being reported. So, and there is some criteria about making sure that the particular device is registered prior as a prerequisite to report that serious incident.